The Tale of Squirrel Natkin by Beatrix Potter, author of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Natkin and His Tail. This is a tale about a tail that belonged to a little red squirrel. And his name was Natkin. He had a brother called Twinkleberry and a great many cousins. They lived in a wood at the edge of a lake. Old Brown flying home. In the middle of the lake there is an island covered with trees and nut bushes, and amongst those trees stands a hollow oak tree, which is the house of an owl who is called Old Brown. At the edge of the lake, one autumn when the nuts were ripe, and the leaves on the hazel bushes were golden and green, Natkin and Twinkleberry and all the other little squirrels came out of the wood and down to the edge of the lake, rafting to the island. They made little rafts out of twigs, and they paddled away over the water to Owl Island to gather nuts. Each squirrel had a little sack and a large oar, and spread out his tail for a sail. The first offering. They also took with them an offering of 3 fat mice as a present for Old Brown, and put them down upon his doorstep. Then Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels each made a low bow and said politely, "Old Mr. Brown, will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island?" Natkin bobbing like a cherry. But Natkin was excessively impertinent in his manners. He bobbed up and down like a little red cherry, singing, riddle me, rot-tot-tote. A little wee man in a red coat, a staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. If you'll tell me this riddle, I'll give you a groat. Now this riddle is as old as the hills, Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Natkin. He shut his eyes obstinately and went to sleep. Filling the sacks. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts and sailed away home in the evening. The second offering. But next morning they all came back again to Owl Island, and Twinkleberry and the others brought a fine fat mole and laid it on the stone in front of Old Brown's doorway and said, "Mr. Brown, will you favor us with your gracious permission to gather some more nuts?" Tickling with a nettle. But Natkin, who had no respect, began to dance up and down, tickling old Mr. Brown with the nettle and singing, "Old Mr. B, riddle me, hitty-pitty within the wall, hitty-pitty without the wall. If you touch hitty-pitty, hitty-pitty will bite you." Mr. Brown woke up suddenly and carried the mole into his house. Shut the door in his face. He shut the door in Natkin's face. Presently a little thread of blue smoke from a wood fire came up from the top of the tree, and Natkin peeped through the keyhole and sang, "A house full, a hole full, and you cannot gather a bowlful." Playing marbles. The squirrels searched for nuts all over the island and filled their little sacks. But Natkin gathered oak apples, yellow and scarlet, and sat upon a beech stump playing marbles and watching the door of old Mr. Brown, fishing for minnows. On the third day the squirrels got up very early and went fishing. They caught 7 fat minnows as a present for Old Brown. They paddled over the lake and landed under a crooked chestnut tree on Owl Island, bringing the third offering. Twinkleberry and 6 other little squirrels each carried a fat minnow. But Natkin, who had no nice manners, brought no present at all. He ran in front, singing, "The man in the wilderness said to me, 'How many strawberries grow in the sea?' I answered him as I thought good, 'As many red herrings as grow in the wood.'" But old Mr. Brown took no interest in riddles, not even when the answer was provided for him. The fourth offering. On the 4th day the squirrels brought a present of 6 fat beetles, which were as good as plums in plum pudding for Old Brown. Each beetle was wrapped up carefully in a dock leaf, fastened with a pine needle pin. But Natkin sang as rudely as ever. Old Mr. B, Riddle Miri, flower of England, fruit of Spain, met together in a shower of rain, put in a bag tied round with a string. If you'll tell me this riddle, I'll give you a ring. Which was ridiculous of Natkin, because he had not got any ring to give to Old Brown. Playing with pincushions. The other squirrels hunted up and down the nut bushes, but Natkin gathered Robin's pincushions off a briar bush and stuck them full of pine needle pins. The fifth offering. On the fifth day the squirrels brought a present of wild honey. It was so sweet and sticky that they licked their fingers as they put it down upon the stone. They had stolen it out of a bumblebee's nest on the tippity top of the hill. But Natkin skipped up and down, singing, hum-a-bum, buzz, buzz, hum-a-bum buzz. As I went over Tippletine, I met a flock of bonny swine, some yellow-naked, some yellow-backed. They were the very bonniest swine that e'er went over Tippletine, eating the honey. Old Mr. Brown turned up his eyes in disgust at the impertinence of Natkin, but he ate up the honey, playing ninepins. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts, but Natkin sat upon a big flat rock and played ninepins with a crab apple and green fir cones. The sixth offering. On the sixth day, which was Saturday, the squirrels came again for the last time. They brought a new-laid egg in a little rush basket as a last parting present for Old Brown. But Natkin ran in front laughing and shouting, Humpty Dumpty lies in the beck, with a white counterpane round his neck. 40 doctors and 40 wrights cannot put Humpty Dumpty to rights. Old Brown's interest. Now old Mr. Brown took an interest in eggs. He opened one eye and shut it again. But still he did not speak. More and more impertinent. Natkin became more and more impertinent. Old Mr. B. Old Mr. B. Hickamore, hackamore on the king's kitchen door. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't drive hickamore, hackamore off the king's kitchen door. Natkin danced up and down like a sunbeam, but still Old Brown said nothing at all. Leaping at Old Brown's head, Natkin began again. Arthur Aubauer has broken his band. He comes roaring up the land. The King of Scots with all his power cannot turn Arthur of the Bower. Natkin made a whirring noise to sound like the wind, and he took a running jump right onto the head of Old Brown. Then all at once there was a flutterment and a scufflement and a loud squeak. The other squirrels scuttered away into the bushes, peeping cautiously. When they came back very cautiously, peeping round the tree, there was Old Brown sitting on his doorstep, quite still, with his eyes closed, as if nothing had happened. But Natkin was in his waistcoat pocket. Pin Natkin. This looks like the end of the story, but it isn't. Escape. Old Brown carried Natkin into his house and held him up by the tail, intending to skin him, but Natkin pulled so very hard that his tail broke in two, and he dashed up the staircase and escaped out of the attic window. Natkin without his tail. And to this day, if you meet Natkin up a tree and ask him a riddle, he will throw sticks at you, and stamp his feet and scold and shout.